Hello, this is J.G. Hertzler. You may know me in my other incarnation as General Martok of the Alpha Quadrant, Kronos' first city, the Imperial Klingon fleet. And you are listening, not to me, not only to me, but to Spoiler Country. Enjoy, but don't enjoy anything too much. That is not the Klingon way. Martok out.
Hey, people of Earth, it's time to enter the Spoilerverse via our secret portal at the exclusive Arctic Club in beautiful downtown Seattle with our hosts, John and Kenrick. Welcome to Spoiler Country.
Hey, if you're listening to our show for the first time and you're on one of the social medias that we're on, like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of those kinds of things, you should always check us out on Spoilerverse.com. But if you want to keep up with our latest episodes, you should bring out your smartphone, get into your favorite podcatcher, find Spoiler Country, and hit subscribe. Then you'll get all our new stuff.
And if you want to reach out to us, you can do that in two ways. You can call us, leave us a voicemail at 707-656-2080. Again, 707-656-2080. Or you can shoot us an email at spoilercountry@gmail.com.
Welcome back to Spoiler Country. I'm Kenneth Regan. That is Mr. Horsley. And today on the show, well, it's J.G. Hertzler, isn't it?
It is, man. He played Martok on Star Trek DS9. He's been in other Star Trek stuff.
Wait, how do you say it? Martok?
Martok. Martok. M-A-R-T-O-K.
Oh, okay, Martok. I was like, Martok.
It's more talking.
Yeah.
Like what we're doing right now.
Every time you read the script, it's like more talk.
Yeah.
I just keep going because you keep telling me to do more talk.
Right. And we just won't shut up. I get it.
So Martok.
JJ came on and talked with Jeff, and they had a great time, man.
Nice.
We're getting down. We're getting down to where we've had pretty much somebody on from every season or every iteration of Star Trek.
That's crazy.
We need the movies now, and we need the original series. So
that's crazy. It's kind of cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear what J.G. Hertzler has to say. So that's why we just get into it and listen to J.G. in his own words.
Hello, listeners of Spoiler Country. Today on the show, we had the fantastic J.G. Hertzler. How's it going, sir?
It's great. I don't know about fantastic. I don't know. That sort of makes me into a fictional character. But I'll buy it. I'll take that.
To anyone who loves Star Trek, who enjoyed the 90s Zorro TV show, you are certainly fantastic.
Well, now that character on Zorro, the alcalde Ignacio de Soto of Cadiz, España, was indeed fantastic. I'm a very lucky person. I mean, to be able to do Martok and alcalde in the same decade was pretty wonderful.
I mean, it really wasn't. It's impressive, and I got to go back for most of our interviews. I go back and do some more research. I mean, I have seen the Deep Space Nine episodes before, but it was nice to revisit them. And your character really does hum. When he's on camera, when you're on camera, you it just energizes it.
I don't know why that is, but it's just I think it's, they say that any artist, I guess any actor is happy to have 5 projects that they were part of in their life that they're really proud of. And certainly Star Trek is the top of the list. And sometimes it just, whatever you're doing, just connects with the person inside of you, and the person inside of the character connect like nothing else does. So I was lucky.
I mean, going back into a little bit into your background, you've had a very interesting life. Your parent, you had a father in the United States Air Force. Your mother was a French and Latin teacher. It seems like that's some very different types of careers to have as parents. One, definitely military. I assume very serious, very focused on obviously defense, protection, things of that nature, and then the very creative arts of French and Latin. What was that like? What was it like to have them as parents? Was it a very balanced childhood then?
Well, I have no way to compare it. But yeah, my mother always wanted to be a teacher. She was always a teacher. And my dad signed up for the Army in 1940 because he got wind that there was going to be a draft coming up pretty big. And so he joined the Army as an enlisted man. And I don't know how he gradually got into. He loved to go fast. I do know that. I have lots of pictures of him as a kid, when he was a kid in the way back 1920s, going to car races and whatnot. And he loved to go fast. And I think he really wanted to be a pilot, but his eyesight was like mine. It wasn't so good. So he wasn't able to fly, but he was able to. He was retired as director of maintenance at Andrews. It's called Joint Base Andrews now, but it was Andrews Air Force Base when he retired. It's where Air Force One and all the Air Force Ones and Twos are kept. So he was able to fly during World War II and the Korean War, but not as the pilot. He was always on board, but he was an engineer. It was like he was the Scotty of his day.
I mean, that's kind of amazing. Did he have a lot of? Did he used to share stories of World War II a lot with you?
Not one.
Not one. Wow.
Not one. I don't. I had when I was in college. I started college in '68, and that was the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. And I had lots of friends, not lots of friends. I had friends in high school that were drafted or joined up and never came back. But it was, I don't know why I was going there. But the thing about the Vietnam vets that I know, and I think it was the same with my dad, but we never went there, never talked about it. Every Vietnam vet that I've met in my life, because they're all my age group, just about, has a stack of pictures, of Polaroid pictures about 4 inches thick. And they keep them in a box with a rubber band around them. They don't bring them out very often, and they never ever talk about what they did, what happened in Vietnam.
That is so strange, because looking at the current generation and maybe even my generation, where every thought you have is shared with everybody all the time you can.
Right.
Every little trip you go, anywhere you visit, every dish you eat must be photographed, documented, and shared. It's such a different generation that they did not want to share that part of them.
No, it must have been, and I know not whereof I speak, because I was not there. I would have the luckiest number I ever hit in my life, and I've been to plenty of casinos. The luckiest number was 332, which was my birth date. It was chosen out of the fishbowl for that first lottery of draftees. They were done by lottery starting in '68, I think. And if you had a low number, like under 70, you were definitely going to be drafted into the Army and go to Vietnam. So my number was 332. And so, short of an invasion from Mars, I would not have called up.
Well, what did your father think about the possibility of you being drafted?
Well, my dad was tough as nails, but I am sure that he would have preferred me not to have been drafted, not to go to Vietnam, because it was a meat grinder. And he had seen Korea. He worked on a lot of helicopters that would crash, in Korea, and get them flying again. And he was stationed over there for a while during the Korean War. I don't think he would have taken any pride, if that's what you're asking, in his son going to Vietnam. Both my parents were pretty strong Republicans from the same small town in Pennsylvania. And it's really between, I think it was, what was the guy's name that was the press, George Stephanopoulos and James Carville. James Carville says, between Pennsylvania is a Democratic state in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, but between it is basically Alabama. between those two cities. And so they're very, very Republican conservative farming. Basically, it's farming country. And it's less that way now. But when he was a kid, and he was back in the 50s, when I was growing up, I was born in Georgia, but I grew up basically in Morocco and Germany, and then Texas, and then back to the Washington, D.C. area. He was retired there at Andrews. But I don't, he was not a hunter. He used to tell me a story about a fawn being shot, or a doe being shot right next to him. And he used to tell me that story, that he was about to walk up to this doe, and then a hunter shot the doe right in front of him. And I think that changed that helped to form, because I don't know what it was before, but he was not a hunter, and there was nothing military about our household. I mean, I have friends that I grew up with on Air Force bases and whatnot, and many of them would answer the phone. This is General Tubner's residence, Mike Tubner speaking, or this is Colonel Holmes' residence. We never did that. It was a hello, and so that sort of fits in with Martok, because I was always being told by Worf that, but Martok, that is not the Klingon way. One of the great lines I had, I think it was cut though from the show, was, Worf, anything a Klingon does is the Klingon way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's basically it.
I mean, you've also have had an amazing background yourself educationally. I mean, you had degrees in political science, a master's degree in set design. You've attended law school for a little while as well. How did you, like, as an actor, I mean, is there a way you kind of merge all these disciplines into what you do?
Well, my security was a big thing. My parents both grew up during the Depression, so they had no experience. The first musical I ever saw was one that I was in. And so we didn't, even though, I mean, Latin is not exactly the most creative enterprise. It's considered a dead language by many, but I think it lives in every word in English just about that's spoken, and French and Spanish for that matter, and Italian. They're all based in Latin.
I agree.
But I don't know. I'm completely flummoxed by your question.
I'm sorry.
But I did want to say one thing. The first Klingon job I got was when Jonathan Frakes was directing a CD-ROM way back then. Jonathan Frakes was directing a CD-ROM called Klingon. And I auditioned for something. I don't know what it was. I forget what it was. I mean, the star of it was Bob O'Reilly, because Bob was the Mr. Klingon at that point. He and Worf, anyway, back during Next Gen. And at one point I got to a part in the script, and I really didn't know much about Klingons at that point. And I said, well, there was a big sequence that was written in Klingon. And I said, I can't speak. I can't stumble through Klingon. I don't know how these words are pronounced. I don't know what they mean. It's ridiculous. What can I do? I'll speak in a foreign language. Well, wait a minute. Maybe I could do French. No, that really sounds like French. Spanish. No. Oh, Latin. I'll do because many years earlier, I had memorized several. I took Latin for 2 years into college. I kept taking Latin. I missed every important possible thing. That I could have been taking, but I studied Latin. Anyway, I got to this point in the audition piece for Jonathan, and I was saying, well, Worf, it's imposque tantum butere, Catalina patientia nostra quem ad fidem nos eludet, in sonatus haec intelligit, imo vero. And so Jonathan, and I finished, and Jonathan was laughing. He said, nobody has ever auditioned with Latin for me before. I know you find that hard to believe, but and he said, there's nothing written for you in this project, but you know what? I'm going to ask the writers to write you into the script. He says, because I love Latin.
And that's a hard damn language. When I was in college, my first 4 years, I was thinking I was going to do something like paleontology. I was going to have to utilize Latin.
Oh, yeah.
And I took a semester and a half before I flunked out. And that's a hard, before the professor told me I should quit now and walk away. But that's a hard damn language. This is the University of Rhode Island.
Well, Rhode Island. My daughter is in her final year at Vassar right now. But we looked up at Ridsey. We drove up to. We looked at Brown and Rhode Island and Ridsey, the Rhode Island School of Design. Loved Providence. In fact, I went to Brown's in Providence, isn't it?
Yes.
I went up to my nephew's graduation at Brown. This is many years ago. He's in his early 40s now, I guess. And I went. He had nobody to go to his graduation because everybody lived out in California, and I went to it, and standing. Everybody was. I was standing there watching the graduation speeches, and people would come out up in front of me and take pictures of taking pictures of me. Yeah. And I said, "What the hell is that?" They don't look like Zorro fans.
Right.
And then I turned around and it was Ted Turner and, not Bridget Fonda, Jane Fonda. Fonda and Ted Turner were standing behind me.
Oh, wow.
I said, it's you. And he said, no, it's all about you.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think was it your nephew you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, your nephew made the right decision of not going to University of Rhode Island. It's definitely not Brown. Brown is definitely a more upscale academic school.
What were you
than
studying? You said paleontology?
My initial idea was that I was going to prove to my parents that I could go to Texas Christian University for paleontology by doing really well at URI. Where I ended up taking anthropology and primatology instead.
Oh.
Then I ended up doing primatology for about 3 or 4 years. And then I went back to school to become an English teacher. So there you go, the long path.
Interesting. But boy, primatology, that would be, that seems fascinating to me. I always thought I wanted to be an archaeologist. And I don't know how I didn't get into, I went to Bucknell and there was no school of archaeology Bucknell. So I guess that's probably a reason. I played football. I went to Bucknell to play football.
Yeah, I heard you were a linebacker.
Yeah, I was a linebacker. And how bright can I be? The most important thing to be a linebacker is that you want to use your head as a battering ram. And I'm not sure, but I think, in fact, I've said it many times. I think the Klingons are basically a race of linebackers because they do act that way.
It's so funny. When I was reading your backstory in various places, you felt like you were like destined to be a Klingon. I mean, you're a linebacker. But you're also Shakespearean. You have experience with Shakespeare and all your education. You're like and I think you stated that there's a Shakespearean aspect to being a Klingon.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the whole Klingon uniform, the way it was redesigned for, I think, the second film was operatic. Basically, it was Elizabethan operatic with the way everything, the tunic that was the short tunic and basically tights. Those Klingon pants are basically tights with a couple of rows of ribs on them.
Yeah.
And then the boots. Yeah, I have to agree with you. They were very Elizabethan. So maybe you're right about it. I didn't think about that. I've always, whether you're a linebacker, a football player. In fact, I'm writing a book. I'm about 95% done with it, but it's
wow.
Wrote it for my daughter, basically, but I'm going to put it out there. It's called Confessions of a Klingon Linebacker. And I think you're right. You're onto something. There is a strong thematic connection through my life. That what else could I be but a Klingon linebacker?
Now, is it similar preparing to play a game when you're playing as a linebacker to preparing for a role in acting? Is there a sort of mindset that carries over?
Well, I'm not sure. Everybody's different. I mean, I had no marketable athletic skill. all I could do was run as hard as I could into the backfield and disrupt anything that was starting to get going before they could complete whatever they wanted to do.
That's so Klingon.
Yeah, it is so Klingon. You're right. And so I can't speak of anybody else. But I will say that I had many discussions with guys that were also, one guy would tape his socks up just so they were at the right length below his knee. He'd have a tape, and I said, why do you? He said, well, it's important that the height of my socks remain perfect through the game. and I remember the last thing I would do before you go out to play the game was I would just look at myself in the mirror and just say, it was a little Fonzie-esque. All right, looking good.
That's fine. I mean, athletes are so superstitious, and I assume actors are as well. Did you have any superstitions at all?
I am totally superstitious. I don't have any. The only religion I have is pure superstition. I believe in them all. And the theater is loaded with theatrical superstitions. Like you can't wear yellow on opening night. You can't have a peacock feather on stage because it's bad luck. It's the evil eye. You can't whistle backstage, and there's a reason for that, of course, because it used to be the way the grips would communicate with each other. And if you whistled the wrong thing, a big sandbag might drop out of the flies and hit you on the head. But I don't walk under ladders. I don't step on a crack in the sidewalk. I don't do anything that might be possibly misfortune. Offer me some misfortune. So yeah, I think theater. There's a lot of theater traditions that are based on superstition, and there's a lot of the same thing's true of theater, of film and television. And football, not so much. Let me see. What did I do? Things that were, I actually don't remember because I hit my head constantly running at full speed into other people. So anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm superstitious per se. All I know is why risk it?
That's exactly it. I can't take that chance. I got enough going against me. I think it's a matter of confidence. If you're super confident, I don't think you can be superstitious. But if you have a doubt anywhere, you say, well, I don't want to risk that. So yeah, I agree.
Now you've played a lot of Shakespeare in your life. Well, what roles did you play?
I'm just looking at a thing I have here. I taught a course called Shakespeak, a method. There's a method to the madness of acting Shakespeare. And to answer your question about a lot of actors on Star Trek did have classical training, especially in Shakespeare. I think for one reason, most of the people, a lot of the people that were playing aliens like Klingons or Romulans or what was Vulcans. I was trying to think what was Gary Graham. Gary Graham was a Romulan, right? Anyway, what you're required to do to play an alien is to speak in a very strange manner. Like, for instance, a Klingon would never use a contraction, and aliens wouldn't because it's too commonplace. So it creates a heightened form of American English in our cases, but it's a heightened form that sort of harkens back to Shakespeare because the actor's job in Shakespeare is, for instance, what I teach is there's the truth of the line and there's the grace of the line. So you not only have to understand why you're talking, who you're talking to, what your biography, your completed biography is, what the circumstances are, what action you're taking, but you also have to do it with Shakespeare in verse. Often. It's not all in verse, but it's either prose or verse. But the prose is magnificent, and the verse is just lifted a little bit. Not things that rhyme. The end of every line is a rhyme, but it's verse literally called blank verse, which means it doesn't have to have the exact rhyming meter or rhyming sounds. Or anyway, a lot of the actors who played aliens were Shakespearean trained. And that's true of Gary. That's true of Biggs, Casey. It's true of Armand. It's true of Rene. Rene Auberjonois was one of the greatest Shakespearean actors we had in the American theater. Armand is the same. So I don't know why I'm saying all that, but there is definitely a connection between Shakespeare and training and speaking in a heightened language and aliens on Shakespeare.
Is that what you meant? There was in the special feature in Deep Space Nine Season 7 on the DVD, you stated that they tend to go with people who can operate in a strangely heightened reality, somehow make it as close to reality as you can.
Yeah, we had yeah.
Is that what you meant by strangely heightened reality?
Exactly. We had to be able to. Think of us. Well, I mean, what we looked like rock star / motorcycle maniacs with teeth that were just hideous and speaking in a heightened form of language, language that often we got a chance to use that had no meaning whatsoever to 99% of people watching. There are the 1%ers who have taken it upon themselves to learn Klingon. But yeah, that's exactly what I meant. And I still think that's true. The job was to make it believable. That's it. It just be honest with your approach. And so honesty is important, but also an understanding of how to lift the language so it doesn't sound unapproachable. Anyway.
That sounds like the same philosophy as an actor, especially today, would approach Shakespeare. Because obviously with Shakespeare, a lot of the listeners are not going to pick up the language as quickly as it's spoken if you're watching a play or a movie or whatnot. But but the actor themselves, through the performance, kind of allows you to understand what's being said.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, Patrick Stewart taught a Shakespeare workshop. I think it was the last year that he was on Next Gen. He decided he wanted to teach a workshop because he had studied at the National Theatre or the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London as a young actor. And then I guess he was part of the National Theatre, making a cool 250 pounds a week as opposed to 12 million, 15 million a film.
Yeah.
But he learned, basically, he was, for 20 years or 25 years, he was a Shakespearean actor in England. And he wanted to share what he had learned over his time studying the Bard with the actors in Los Angeles. And I remember him telling me that I got involved with it because he was friends with one of the women in the show. I can't remember her character's name, but it was Jennifer Hetrick, is a relative of mine from Pennsylvania. Hetrick is a family name in my family. And so I think she recommended me to help him find a suitable place to do the workshop. Where we ended up doing it, I drove with him all over Hollywood looking for a great, because I knew all the byways and the slyways, but really nothing suited to Jean-Luc Picard. So where we ended up doing was on the Studio H, which was the musical recording studio at Paramount. So every Saturday, we'd have a Shakespeare class from about 10 o'clock in the morning till about 8 at night. It was a long, there were 15 people there. James Avery was part of it, many other people that you would know. And if Patrick couldn't get there for one of the Saturdays, if he was busy, he would bring in somebody to take his place. One time he asked, I came to class and there's Ben Kingsley teaching, so it was a remarkable time for me. And I forget what. Oh, the thing that Patrick said, he said, if you're doing the Shakespeare correctly on any given night, if you're doing the performance successfully, you can feel the audience breathing with you. And it's not easy. It doesn't happen very often. But when it does, it's a remarkable experience. And he would say, John, why are you speaking with such a high voice? I said, well, it's Richard II. He's like the poet king. And I thought I would like, he says, no. use that magnificent tool that you have. You have such a good range. And but he said there are so many things to track, like, because as I was saying with Shakespeare, there's the verse, which includes a zillion kinds of figures of speech. There's the scansion, which refers to the meter, da 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 da. It's short and long emphasis on each line could be. It's called iambic pentameter, but it's almost never do you find a. I'm getting into the weeds. Never mind.
No worries. No, I'm an English teacher. I love it.
Oh, you are? That's right.
Yes.
Well, meter in poetry, and
indeed,
every change in meter has a meaning in Shakespeare. It means the person's confused while they're talking. The person is incredibly confident while they're talking. The person is attacking while they're talking. And it's all those things are included in the meter that Shakespeare chose to write that particular thought in. And anyway, that's why it's Shakespeare. What can I say?
And it's kind of interesting when you think of Shakespeare, and I know this is, maybe I'm overstretching the comparison here, but it seems like there is something similar to the idea of Star Trek and Shakespeare, as far as you're dealing with two literary things that have such a deep legacy to it that people have certain expectations of you when you do it.
Well, I know that Roddenberry wanted to, obviously, from the first few series that he did, he wanted to deal with issues that were critical to understanding, if it's possible, mankind. And so did Shakespeare. So what they were dealing with was human nature, and in all of its forms, just love in all of its permutations. For instance, love in the musicals, Kiss Me, Kate, Taming of the Shrew. Taming of the Shrew is about this woman who is basically a tyrant to her family, very troubled. And she meets this man, Petruchio, who basically, quote unquote, tames her by throwing her in prison, not feeding her, treating her like garbage, and she falls in love with him. And so you got to ask, what the hell is Shakespeare writing about there? Because it's always played with a wink and a nod at the audience, but that's not it. He would, he deals with the idea of love in all of its permutations in so many of his plays.
That definitely did not probably age well, that play.
Which didn't?
Taming of the Shrew probably did not age well with today's audiences.
Oh, no. It absolutely does. It's the Stockholm syndrome.
Okay.
It's the you know what that is.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
Well, out of the being a captured, what's it called? I can't think of the word for it.
It's not prisoner of war, but it's similar probably.
Yeah, it is. Like a prisoner of war. At some point, it often occurs that the prisoners become the adoring fans of their captive, the captives fall in love with their captors. And it's for a plethora of reasons that psychologists deal with, constantly, I'm sure. But in fact, it's true. It exists. And I think that's the way, I guess maybe it's my thought. That's what I think. That's the kind of love that Shakespeare was talking to us about in Taming of the Shrew. Anyway.
It is amazing how much of Shakespeare is absolutely universal. I teach it, I teach it to my students. I teach at a therapeutic high school. So I do have all four grades. So I teach Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Julius Caesar, and now Hamlet. And I try to infuse to my students the universality of the stories, and that the reason why these stories survive for 400 years is because there's a truth in them, and that truth survives centuries. And that is true, I think, of Shakespeare, and that there's a truth to that in Star Trek. The ambition and the ideas behind it are universal, which is why, the original series still holds up. Whether or not the special effects do, doesn't matter. The stories do, and they always have.
I don't think any other TV show has an audience that's worldwide for over 5 decades. Star Trek is unique in that way. And I firmly agree with you that it is, for the same reason Shakespeare is classic. Roddenberry dealt with issues that were vital to understanding humanity, and he dealt with them he used science fiction to study his topics. Shakespeare used blank verse and the vasty fields of France, or the throne rooms of England, the atop of castle walls at Pomfret Castle. Anyway, I agree. Basically, I'm saying I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people point to Star Trek and the diversity of the cast, which is fantastic. But I think that the reason why Star Trek is so universal is because apparently no matter what culture or country you live in or your background that you have, the idea of that optimism and hope is universal. That's the universal aspect of Star Trek that everyone can hold on to.
It makes me wonder what Roddenberry would be thinking watching this world now. I was just listening to the news, and variant forms of coronavirus are now, they fear, Fauci and whom they fear that there's the fear is challenging the hope to such a degree. I've never seen it in my life. This is worldwide. It's almost a science fiction world that we're living in right now. But unfortunately, it's real.
And the thing that is interesting, potential, and maybe also unfortunate. Well, I mean, obviously there's supposed to be there's 4 strains right now. Supposedly they're out there. The common one, the one in Brazil, one in Africa, one in England. But the part that you think could be potentially hopeful for the future is that at this moment, unlike any time probably since Spanish influenza, the world is sharing a common experience. And you think there would be some benefit to sharing a common experience, even if, especially in one that is tragic. But I feel that that's not going to be the path we're going to follow.
Well, I wonder what path was followed in 1918. I don't know that it's certainly. I don't think it. If you're implying that you think that maybe it was a shared experience that brought the world together somehow, I don't know that that's true. And I certainly don't think it's true right now, because, I mean, I just was able to get the first dose of the vaccine, the Moderna vaccine. And then like 2 days later, it's like, the new strain is, doesn't work on the new strain. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but
I know exactly what you're saying. I got my vaccine on last Wednesday, a Moderna as well. Yeah, and I'm not feeling too good to know that Brazil is apparently going to not work on the Brazilian strain.
I know, that's exactly the words I would choose. I'm not feeling so good about that.
I mean, I think they found out Minneapolis. I think they found it, or somewhere along there. They found it was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there, we'll see what happens, but it's like the world is tired of waiting to see what happens. People are chomping at the bit to have some sort of normalcy. Not only did we have the lack of normalcy in health issues, but politically, the whole world it seems abnormal. So at least I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it like I said, it is problematic, and it does feel that the reason why there's 4 strains now is because we didn't do what we should have done when it first started, which was obviously shut things down, try to be more courteous about it. Yeah, and I think we bought time for the virus.
It's a real tough thing to combine, individual freedom, living in a society that emphasizes individual freedom necessarily above all else, with the idea that you have to be mandated to wear a mask. They don't seem to go together, and so The result is confusion, fear, and spread.
It does feel like there's a lack of understanding of what they mean by freedom. Like freedom seems to be confused with I can do what I want, whatever I want, instead of freedom being the opportunity to do the right thing for your fellow citizens. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you're living in a society. You can't have a society if everybody wants to do exactly what they want, when they want to do it, how they want to do it, because then you don't have a society. You got a bunch of cave people. Whoever has the biggest rock is going to get their way.
Right.
Anyway, yeah,
it's definitely unfortunate. And I think by the time I get my second vaccine, I'm going to have to need a new vaccine to deal with whatever's coming around the corner.
Oh, I know. They say that we can get a booster of some sort that will adapt, but then you need a booster for the booster for the booster for the booster.
Yeah, I will say that news of the Brazilian strain, and with watching CNN today, listening to Fauci, kind of was the realization that this is not going to end. I really thought when the vaccine came out, I was like, all right, another 3, 5, 6 months, we'll be done with this. Now I'm thinking, well, this is the world now. This is life.
Yeah, I hope that's not true, but it's definitely going to take longer before a normalcy can be returned. But, the new normal, Zoom shows, this show, even though it's just speech, it's like a telephone call. It's like a telephone call that people can listen in on. But that seems normal. I mean, 6 months ago? It's a what? It's a Zoom what? It's a, what are you talking about? It's very hard to do play. I mean, there's no production for film, television, or theater. There's no concerts. But there's Zoom concerts and there's Zoom shows. It's very hard to do. I've done a couple plays for theaters that presented them as a Zoom production. Timing is almost impossible, and timing is important in theater. And anyway, I forget what that was.
And I will say the one thing about Zoom as well is that it unfortunately pushes you away from your audience, which is obviously going to be, I'm sure, problematic for any theater.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. No, it's very difficult. I don't think most of the theaters that I know, most of the theaters that I've spent my life working in are closed, and at least half of them will not open again. It's a devastating blow to live performance. And I don't know, I'm curious to find out what's going to be on the other end of it, because if there is another end of it, I hope there is, but I just don't know what to expect.
I think that's where everyone is. Everyone's trying to figure out where do we go from here, and I assume it's ad lib. You can figure it out as you go.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, because the Fauci monster is definitely warning us. As gentle as he's perhaps the most gentle bad news giver that I know of. He's very, very. Well, he's 80, plus he's 80 years old. He's seen a lot. I mean, think of the 80. That's like 30 or 1940.
1940,
Born in 1940, before World War II. Think of what he's seen. My grandmother lived to be 107. She was born in 1893.
Oh, wow.
Died in 1999. Think of the world that she saw, and yet somehow missed the coronavirus.
That's amazing. I mean, she lived before the invention of the airplane, and she saw humans land on the moon. That's exactly.
I had conversations with her. I said, "Grandma, you see, these guys are landing on the moon, and there was not even the idea of flight when you were born." And it was astounding. Yeah. I was going to say something about the Depression. People were born in the Depression were very careful. And that was attached to the idea of risk taking. And I think my parents were both born in 1912, 1913. So they grew up in basically adulthood in the Depression. The adulthood welcomed them, and the Great Depression welcomed them. So that's kind of devastating too. Everything changed in their lives. And then World War II. it doesn't get any better than that. But anyway.
Well, the I guess the one true lesson is the world doesn't slow down ever.
Let's hope not. If it slows down, the continents are going to start moving.
Exactly. I actually had an interesting realization. This was a few months back. I realized that I will never again have a student who was alive before 9/11.
Right.
Because obviously the oldest you're going to be is 18 in high school, usually.
Right.
So, I realized this feels like once again, sort of almost like 2010 when they're talking about the children of the two suns. I kind of feel like I'm in the same world where I was like the post 9/11 existence, and it's just it's weird. Time is weird.
It is weird, and my daughter's 21. And back to my book, I'm writing it basically for her because I had 50 years on this earth before she was born. So, and she doesn't really know anything about me in those 50 years. So I'm writing her, trying to catch her up with those 50 years of her father's life and how it melted into hers. So, but that's the reason I'm doing it. So to let her know what life was like before she got here.
And just a slight just slightly in reading about you, like I said, your life, those 50 years are amazing. You actually worked in the Nixon administration. I read.
I did.
I read that. I was like, holy, that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I literally was on the mall collecting money. I was collecting money, government workers against Nixon. His inauguration. I literally was that. And I was in Watergate like the night before it was broken into.
Oh, wow.
They had a radio station in the Watergate on the same floor, right near the DNC. And I was in there doing a commercial about Nixon. It was all work and no play makes Dickie Boy a sad fellow. And it was an anti-Nixon spot that played on the radio for the inauguration. Anyway, the music, the only song I remember is "That'll Be the Day When You Say Goodbye." Oh, that'll be the day. And it was the night before the break-in happened.
Wow.
At Watergate.
That's amazing. You've led a hell of a life.
We've all seen some stuff, man, Jeff. We've all seen some stuff. And if you take it all together, the one thing I can say I advise strongly is write it down. Write down the memories, write down the events, write down the dreams, write down the failures, write it all down, because otherwise it's lost. It's here and gone. And anyway, that's why I'm doing this.
So one question I did have for you, to go back a little bit to acting, do you think people who do act in sci-fi shows like Star Trek get the credit they deserve as actors?
No, I don't think. I think it's incredibly underrated. Because you not only have to touch the human heart with what you're saying, but you have to do it, wearing 16 layers of latex and strange teeth and bizarre talking about things that happen on another planet. It's really, and yet you have to have approachable drama for the viewer. And it's extraordinary when sci-fi is done badly. Lord God, it's bad. But when it's good, it is, it strikes a human chord like nothing else. And like no other kind of theater or film or television. I remember the longest line I have ever been in at the theater was when The Empire Strikes Back was opening in New York. I stood in line for that movie. I lived in New York then. And right behind me was John Malcheri, who was the conductor of the New York Philharmonic. I said, wow. Anyway, it was, I forget what the question was, but I know it was an important one.
Do people who give proper credit?
Sci-fi. It's not just entertainment. It is so much more. It is human drama amplified to a power of 10. It's not just It's not a soap opera, and it's not a rom-com, and it's not a cop show that's dealing with, crime and solving the crime, solving the punishment. It's really about the human condition. That's really all it's about. And it must include in it arresting imagery of another time, another place, another world that speaks to the same devastating things that can happen in our own life. Anyway, I agree with you. I think it's sadly underrated, and I don't know why that is.
And I do think there's a bias against science fiction just because it on the surface it seems that it may be more static than other more openly dramatic programs. But Star Trek, I mean, there's so many wonderful actors who have come through Star Trek, including yourself. And I think people don't also accept or realize the importance of even the alien characters. Like the Klingons over the years have been made into a very fascinating culture. And obviously, as playing General Martok, you're a part of creating that very the richness of that Klingon culture that does have, like a reality all of its own.
Well, I got a chance to embody it, but I didn't create it. It's the writers, the writing. Ron Moore, for instance, is my personal hero. He's written so much, but everything he wrote about whenever he wrote one of the Klingon episodes, and he wrote most of them, you knew it was going to be dealing with deep cultural things, beliefs that Klingons hold, that they either have to find a way not to violate, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
He didn't just throw it out, and hide it in a bunch of bat'leth fights or landings somewhere. But he dealt with issues just like humans have to deal with each other. The Klingons, that's what he wrote. He wrote deep investigations of human nature in a Klingon body, basically.
And one interesting about you in how you created how you developed the character of Martok is that Martok was originally introduced as a changeling. That wasn't the real Martok. And later on, you get to play what would be the real General Martok. Did you first know when you took the role of the changeling that he was going to be the changeling, and that eventually you would get to play the real version? And did you make any decisions in your acting to incorporate that?
No, first of all, I didn't know. But secondly, I was not supposed to go on beyond that episode where he gets turned into plasma. And it wasn't until about 3 or 2 weeks later, I got a call from Ira Bear, who's the soul father of Star Trek. He said, we're going to bring you back. Don't worry, John. We're going to bring you back because it finally struck us that Worf now can have a friend, a father figure, a friend that that could bounce ideas off of, and it won't be about flying a spaceship or attacking an enemy, but about things that Klingon adults could talk about. Like the speech that Martok had in advising Worf about marriage, it's an obvious choice that I would bring that up, but I can't tell you how many viewers of Star Trek, of DS9, and followers of what Martok did and said have said how much that scene meant to them about sharing the joy with someone and not coming home to an empty house, Worf. I had a young man in Australia at a convention that said, and this is the only time it's happened, he said, I just want you to know that you're the reason I did not harm my parents. I said,
oh, wow.
Because he was definitely troubled, but he said, I paused and asked myself, what would Martok do?
Wow.
Oh my Lord. So anyway, you never know how you're going to affect somebody's life. And I'm sure we've all had, you've probably had students that said something to you that has stuck with you, the words and the feelings, the thought for decades, for years and years. And
That is true.
And you never know what's going to affect the soul of another human. Anyway.
And, and a lot of your scenes that you played in Deep Space Nine were played alongside Michael Dorn, who plays Worf.
Right.
And Worf, Michael Dorn's Worf, I feel kind of that character helped define Klingons for at least how we understand them, because obviously the original Star Trek had Klingons, but I don't think they really delve into what it was to be a Klingon until Worf. And so Worf was sort of like, I don't say he's not the first Klingon, but he's the first well-developed, well-researched Klingon. When you first played Martok, did he offer any advice on how to be Klingon?
No.
No.
Michael is very insulated. I just saw him. I talked to him the other day. He was doing a Zoom show for somebody. It was Dan Devey, and Dan had asked me, "Can you come on? Can you just burst into the show and say hello to Michael?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I did, and Michael said, "And John, that if this ever happens, the Captain Worf thing, if it ever, you're going to have to go back into makeup." And I said, "Michael, I'm in makeup now. Martok is my street makeup." And I feel
that's awesome.
Yeah. But Michael is a very easy to love human being. He's just a tremendously sweet man, but on the other hand, he's very quiet. He doesn't offer his opinion about anything or anybody. He works with whatever you give him, and so no, he never said, you might want to think about this. Whereas opposed to me, where I would happily share my opinion on everybody's performance at all times.
Yeah, and
Bob O'Reilly, who sucks.
And I mean, your character Martok, you pretty much were the father figure for Worf. Was that an interesting dynamic on set?
No, it really didn't. It didn't translate off set. It was all totally in the show, and I never had any. I'm really not. It's like Jimmy Stewart said: if I were as smart as all the people that I've played, or as sensitive, I'd be a very good person. But I'm not. And what was I going to say? Something about Worf. I don't think. I've spent most of the last 23 years, I guess, doing conventions since like the 2 years before in 98. I've been doing conventions for Star Trek all those years, and I've become my best friend and really my brother is Bob O'Reilly. Bobby. We actually just occasionally call each other to comment on the news and end up laughing for another 45 minutes on the phone, so, and that's truly great to have. And, we're dire enemies. I had to kill him to get to my chancellorship.
That was a fantastic testament, I think, to how popular Martok became, that they actually had your character defeat Gowron and become the new chancellor himself. I mean, was that something you talked to the writing staff? You're like, "Hey guys, I would like to be chancellor at some point." I mean, how did that even develop?
No, I of course I never did, but Bob will not hesitate to remind me. Yes, I was Klingon chancellor for about 11 years. You were Klingon chancellor for one episode.
That's pretty funny.
Perhaps, but not today. Yeah, he will never ever let that go, and I wouldn't want him to.
That is awesome. I also read a story about you as well when it comes to Deep Space Nine. There's an episode by Inferno's Light where Martok is offered the return of his eyesight in his left eye. Okay,
right.
Which the character rejects. And I read that this was due to a conversation between you and Stephen Burr. Why was that detail important to you, that he refuses the eyesight in the left eye? Like, why was that something that you held on to?
Oh, well, he said, first of all, I have a bad left eye, no matter what. I mean, I've had it since birth, a lazy eye, and it's just gotten worse over the years. So I don't really use my left eye. I can see movement and light, but that's about it. And at one point, Ira came up to me and said, "And don't worry, John, we can restore your eye. We can give you an artificial eye." I said, no, I don't want an eye. I mean, how good is it that I look like a pirate already, and I have now my left eye is scarred shut. It's perfect, So I said, I think people will love it, and I know I do. So they didn't give me an artificial eye. I said, and it was a good choice, because I think it's one of the reasons people like Martok. There's a few people that have come up to and said to me, I have this ailment or this disability or that disability, and it's always been a joy to see Martok, who only had one eye, who was blind, half blind, to be able to succeed to the chancellorship. So I said, oh, well, whatever it takes. I said, no. I did it purely as for the theatricality of it. I said, don't give me no.
And do you think the character Martok would have refused out of pure pride?
Absolutely. The Klingons would never have an artificial eye, please. No, it was ridiculous on all levels. And he thought he would be doing me a favor. And I said, no.
I mean, your understanding of Martok really is deep and impressive. And I read that you actually have written 2 books. One is The Left Hand of Destiny, parts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And the story focuses on Worf and Martok after Deep Space Nine series has already ended. So this is post ending of the show.
Right.
What inspired you to write the stories? And how did you go about getting them accepted into Star Trek canon?
Well, I was asked, would you be interested in writing a book? And I said, yeah. He said, well, come up with an idea. And I said, I thought about it for a while. And I said, I think I can do that. I think I can do an Arthurian type legend story with Worf and Ezri Dax, and one of my favorite characters in it, of course, was Aaron, who he wasn't there as Nog, but he was there as a character that I created for him, which was basically Nog, but his name was Far, Pharh. And I named him Far for the specific reason that he would, when he's finishing a conversation, he had a chance to say far out. And Aaron loved that. So, but yeah, that's another man that is just my dearest friend gone. We had such a warm relationship on and off the stage, Aaron, and I miss him terribly. Terribly.
Do you think you're going to write any more Star Trek novels in the future?
No, this book I'm writing now is going to be my salute to Star Trek, because it's basically, it's all the things that, my life in Morocco, my life at, going through my football career at Bucknell and going up into struggling in theater that I had no background in. I had anyway. I eventually got an MA from University of Maryland in set design, but other than that, I didn't study theater. And I wish I had. I just was looking at the Yale School of Drama catalog that I've had around here since 1972. It's old, but I'm looking at the courses that were offered, and it just reminds me how much I don't know in the area of endeavor that I've spent my life doing. So, I think it's wonderful that you're an English teacher, by the way. I love, obviously, my mother being a teacher. I want to say thank you for your service. Because my mother was a stickler for grammar, and any Latin teacher is a stickler for grammar, I think. And I can't tell you how many times the subjunctive form of the verb to be in the past tense was to be used as a conditional with if, as opposed to what an American English just disregards it completely, So I have the greatest respect for literature and language.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I mean, what you've done with Star Trek has also been amazing from my perspective. Sorry, my dog is barking. Stupid.
What kind of dog?
It's a blue healer.
Oh, no wonder she's barking. He or she?
It's a she.
Yeah, she says, "Come on, pay attention to me. I've given you enough time now. It's my turn."
Yeah, it's like, she should know when I'm recording and just
right.
but anyways, just a couple more questions. So you've appeared in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise, Star Trek Lower Decks, and Star Trek of Gods and Men. Why do you think not only has Star Trek endured so well, but that you have, what does it feel like to be such an integral part of Star Trek over the years and into so many franchises?
I'm just really an actor. I mean, you audition for something, and if you get it, you get it. You don't, you don't. And I got it. And then it just so happened that like 40 other tumblers turned over in the magic lock. And it got me involved in all those shows. I love I do Martok on Star Trek Online as well, and Bob is on the show too, game, and so I was very lucky. I love going back to the character. I gotta say, it's not I don't have to go very far, and Bob used to tell the story that when he first started on Star Trek, Michael Westmore said to him, "You do know that you're in this now for life." and Bob said, "I didn't know what he was talking about. Now I do, of course." But he said, "Oh yeah, you're part of something very, very unusually large." And the same thing's true. He never said that to me, but I know that he felt that way. And I've heard that before. And it is part of something it's a family that's worldwide and almost timeless. Anyway.
Are you going to attend conventions once if COVID ever subsides?
Yeah, I mean, we're able to do conventions. Conventions happen because we can do Zoom conventions and appearances, and I can get pictures and whatnot to people if they need it, if they want it. But mostly, it's Bob and I have a lot of fun. We have so much fun, even doing Zoom conventions, because we're like a really, really, really poor man's Abbott and Costello, or what's another team like Bob and Ray on radio. We'd have a great deal of fun with each other, and that keeps going on. I'd be really pleased if we can get out of this thing and return to work on the stage, work in studios and do the work. But until that time comes, it's between the writing. I mean, I love to write no matter what. I write a lot. I've written 7 screenplays. None of them are worth anything, but I've spent 20 years on those at least. Got very close. Ed Asner's a friend because I sent him a screenplay, and he called me up out of the blue and he said, "Is this John Hertzler?" I said, "Yeah." It was it was back in LA, middle of July sometime. And he said about 97, 98. He said, "This is Ed Asner, and I read your script. I really like it." And he said, "But you got to realize you can't believe what I have to say about anything, because I'm just an old commie pinko, and nobody believes me about anything. So I'm just telling you." And he worked to get that thing produced for like 20 years. Came close with Martin Scorsese, and then he got sidetracked onto something else, and it never happened. But I had some interesting meetings with people back in the day. Ed Harris, I had a meeting. Ed was interested, and Ed is one of my favorite actors of all time. And if that could have worked out, that would have been good too. But it's an interesting life in LA.
Well, I can only imagine, and I do hope that when conventions do become live again, that you decide to come towards the Rhode Island, Boston, Connecticut area for one of our conventions in this part of the world, part of the country.
I've been up to Marlboro, not Upper Marlboro's in Maryland. Marlboro, is there a Marlboro outside of Boston?
Probably. I try to avoid the Boston area.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to think of now. If I were to say something about spoilers. The immediate word following that, what would you think? What that should be?
Spoilers?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure. It's just spoiler country. That'd be my phrase.
Oh, okay.
Because of the show.
But it's not that I can't say anything about anything, but I can't say anything. But there's stuff in the works, of course. But I keep busy, basically keep occupied. If I didn't have writing to do, I would really be lost. But, when you write, as an English teacher, when you write, you get immersed in the world that you're creating out of nothing. And you live there. It doesn't matter where your physical body is. Your heart and mind is there in that whatever world you're creating. So I don't feel locked into this house. You know what I mean?
Well,
good.
Well, like I said, I do hope you come down to the Northeast. Like I said, I really enjoyed speaking with you. It's a great honor to talk to General Martok himself.
Same here, Jeff. Again, thank you for your service. I think that you're doing much needed work in modern America.
Well, I do my best. Some days more successful than others, but I do my best.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's fantastic. So,
thank you so much, sir.
And we're back. That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com we have a plethora. Plethora is such a snobbish word.
I like it though. It's a good word.
We have an obscene amount of interviews with amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? And then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridges and Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery Point Radio.
Episodes all the time. Misery Point Radio. They've got a ton of great stuff out there. Go check all of them out. And check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you. Every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out, to read, and to love, and to like, and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is just patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once. And really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. Yeah, I'm going to go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts, we are Cthulhu, as Cthulhu compels you to do. Open the mind and read more.